So today we're going to look at orthographic drawing. We have looked at this a little bit before. However, specifically this time I want us to look at an item. You can select an item from around the home, and I want it specifically to be a symmetrical item. So I've sketched this out a little bit just to save us some time so the videos don't run too long. Orthographic, as we've looked before, you would look, if you're taking your item, you wish to look at it from the top, from the front, and from the side. Okay, so I've sketched some of this out. Okay, we should have already had a go at orthographic, but I want you today to select a symmetrical item. So if I was to cut this in half, the placement is equal on both sides. Now, it's not entirely symmetrical because obviously some of the branding and some of the button layout, the actual graphics on the buttons, they're going to be different. But in terms of if you were to leave these buttons unbranded and slice this item in half, it would be entirely symmetrical. Okay, so although this is orthographic, I'm going to concentrate on the front face. Okay, this and this we're going to forget about for the time being. Okay, so as you can see, I've sketched half of it out. Now that's something that when we are drawing symmetrically or symmetrical items, I would plan my shape out. So I would draw a box and then I would draw a line down the very middle of your item. Okay, and now what helps me, it may help you, it may not, but this is my tip, is once you've drawn that item out, I would concentrate on the placement on one side. Okay, now because I'm left-handed, I've drawn on the right-hand side, so I'm not covering up what we are looking at. Okay, but it doesn't really matter which side you start off with. Another tip, and this may help you, it may not, is if you take a mirror, once you've drawn the half, and then you line the mirror up like so, it's just a really easy way to see what the item should look like. So if we're looking at the original item, okay, you should see exactly what it should look like. So if you do have a small mirror that you've got to hand, then that's just another little way. You don't have to do that. Okay, but I'm going to finish this drawing off. So like we've done before, we plan our lines out. So I've sketched all of these lines lightly. Remember, we're not pushing too heavily on the page. If we push too heavily on the page, when we go to rub it out, we'll have loads of engraved lines and it will look really messy. So try and draw lightly. These ones I've pushed heavier because I know I'm keeping these. These are final lines. I'm happy with them. I've gone over them a second time. Okay, so I'm going to start from the top. So you can use a ruler, but often I try to get into the habit where I measure just by eye or just by hand. So I can look at that, I can look and I can say, okay, well that needs to be the same because it's symmetrical, so I can put 2 points. And also try and look at this button lines up quite nicely with the end of this directional pad arrow. So I've tried to line that up. So therefore, when you're drawing on this side, you need to think, well, that needs to be the same, okay? It's almost like a puzzle. Before you just put pencil to paper, there must be a way when you look at the original item, where does that line up? It must line up so it all fits together, as I say, like a puzzle. So I'll place that there. So if I now finish this drawing off, now I might not draw it heavily, but you'll get the idea. Hopefully you can see this. So again, let's do it with a ruler because that might help people. Okay, so that's 7 millimeters. So I'll go on this side and I'll say 7 millimeters. I'll put a little dot. Okay, I also know this directional pad needs to be in line. So I can draw a light line there. I can draw a light line here. Again, I can rub these out. That's absolutely fine. I'm going to draw a line there, okay? And we know that needs to be level as well, so I can probably do that by hand, to be honest. Okay, now you can see already that's made it a lot easier for me to draw this because I've got a framework to draw within. Okay, so I'm going to draw this out. How long is that? That is about 11 millimeters, so let's do 11 millimeters, put a little dot. Like so. These buttons, this directional pad, has slightly curved buttons. And again, this curve Circles are obviously the trickiest thing to do symmetrically. So what I tend to do is, you can use a little template or compass if you want, but I'm trying to get us into the habit of building up our pencil skills so we don't need to really use a ruler or a compass, you know, maybe just to check, but you can draw like so. Okay, now going to the halfway point, that's a lot easier than trying to tackle the whole curve. So now I know I need to match that up. Okay, so that lines up nicely. This button here, I can look, I'm going to do this by eye, I'm going to do it quickly, okay? So I know that should be about there. Try to have nice, clean lines. Lines have gone a bit hairy there. Where possible, with orthographic, you want nice, clean lines. And again, I drew this box out to help me with this circle. And look at that, I can rub this box out. There's no box on this. But look at that line there and there. Okay, that line, don't know if you can see that all right, that line should line up with this fast forward button. So that means this line must line up with this button here, because we know it is symmetrical. Like that. Okay, again, let's say about there, that looks all right to me. Some of you may have already drawn a remote with past exercises. That's fine. You can pick a different item as long as it's symmetrical. Electronic items, the layout, they do tend to be symmetrical. Okay. I've got this, which is just it's like a Roku Now TV box. But if you've got something similar at home, I know the Amazon Fire Stick remote is very similar to this. It's symmetrical. And if you've got an Apple TV, a little thin, it's like a candy bar remote, I guess you would call it. You can have a go at using that if you want to. Okay, so I'm going to draw these lines in, like so. And one thing I realise I've missed out is that circle there. You see there's a circle, there's an indentation. I've actually forgotten to add that, so I can do that now. It probably would have been easier. I've made a little, not a mistake, but probably would have been easier to put that curve in first, but it's fine. Now remember, I've put a point there, that's the halfway point, okay? So I only need to get a curve to go to there, and then I need to get another curve to go up to there. So, as I say, circles or spherical objects are the trickiest things to master, especially if you're doing symmetrical drawings. When I come to mark students' work, quite often I see a lovely piece of work, but the thing that lets it down is we have a shape that looks different on one side than it does on the other, okay? And it's because obviously the student has worked hard, but it's just because we haven't got the framework, okay? If you plan out the framework, it should be nice and easy. Okay, or easier, should I say. So this curve here, obviously that needs to be the same. We don't want it where one curve goes up here and we want to have the same trajectory. So what I try to do is I try and mark a point there, mark a point here, but also where does this start on this axis? Here. Okay, so that lines up with that. So therefore, what's that, 13 millimeters? Let's do 13 millimeters, I'll do a point there. If I do 13 millimeters and I do draw another point here, I know now, it's not fail-safe, but it's a lot harder to get wrong. Because you've got, as I say, keep saying it, but you've got your framework. Like so. Now, mine might not be 100%. I'm sure people will probably pick, you know, you can look at anything. I don't know about you guys, but when I do a drawing, I always notice the mistakes. rather than more so, tends to be more so than look at the points that you've done well. So don't worry, everyone is quite self-critical when it comes to this, but give it a go. And then you can start doing your branding. So I'm not going to do all of it, but perhaps I'll just do the fast forward and the rewind. Now remember, that needs to be the same. You don't want it so that the two arrows up here and these two arrows are down here. So you want to make sure, again, it's not a bad idea to just plot in some lines just so you know where your shapes should go. Like so, and like so. Okay, so this is part one. I'm going to do a second part where I'm going to pick a slightly more complicated shape. So I'm going to pause the video here and stay tuned. There'll be a second video in a moment.